Begin with the line that begins this full sentence. Only was missing the sole timeless word. Note that Sri Aurobindo capitalizes the W. That carries eternity in its lonely sound. The idea, self-luminous key to all ideas. The integer of the Spirit's perfect sum that equates the unequal all to the equal one. Again, capitalize all and one. The single sign interpreting every sign, the absolute index to the absolute. This is such a powerful section. What is this sole timeless word? For me, it has always been Om, which is the creative word of all the universes, through the Divine Mother, who is the creatrix of all these worlds. And this timeless word carries eternity in its lonely sound. Lonely here means solitary sound. It's not lonely itself, but it's a solitary sound. And that solitary sound, when we sing Om, even when we speak Om, Mother says that if anything is going wrong and you speak Om, it will go right, it will change. This is extraordinary. Now, what is this capitalized word? Well, we have it in the Bible also. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh. So we see that the word is so powerful here that he finds that only this is missing, this soul alone, this word alone, this timeless word that is able to carry eternity in its lonely sound. And then he wants to continue to impress upon us the importance of another word, the idea. Because the idea, and he capitalizes the I, he often calls it the real idea, which is actually a synonym for the supramental. So the idea that is self-luminous, supramental, self-luminous, key, it's the key to all ideas. Everything flows down from Satchit Ananda to the supermind, and from the supermind down into all ideas. The idea, self-luminous key to all ideas. The integer of the Spirit's perfect sum. So this is the integer, this Om, this idea, and all of them equate this unequal all, because we all seem to be unequal, don't we? We seem to be carved from different molds, so to speak. And indeed, that there is a truth in that, because had we not taken birth in form, and form is, of course, the most important word here, because without form, there is no creation. So we have taken birth, and slowly through that birth, we have evolved into human beings. Now, that means that we are not in practice equal to the one. So he calls us the unequal all, the unequal everything. But the Om and the real idea, the supramental, equates this unequal all to the equal one. And then he goes further with another comma, the single sign interpreting every sign, the absolute index to the absolute. And notice how he capitalizes the absolute at the end. Well, I've taken a few minutes to go through these few lines, but they're so very important. Let me read them again to you and feel this movement of oneness that is not only the creation of the world and all the worlds, but it is the essence of our life on earth. Only was missing the sole timeless word that carries eternity in its lonely sound. The idea, self-luminous key to all ideas, the integer of the Spirit's perfect sum that equates the unequal all to the equal one. The single sign interpreting every sign, the absolute index to the absolute. Notice the word index. The absolute index. All of this is the absolute index to the divine, to the supramental. Wow. And this is just the beginning of it. He's sharing with us such important information here. Now, can you go down a little bit more?
I have a quick question, Naradji.
Certainly.
The question is that why does he say only was missing the word in an experience where before that he has said all was found there, the unique has dreamed and made? Why was the word missing there?
Well, it's not here yet on earth. And he's going to go on to tell us much more about this.
It's the Divine Mother, I think, the Divine Mother. Really calls down Ashwapad.
Exactly. It's the creatrix of the worlds. And we only see that much later on, after we finish the book of the Traveler of the Worlds. We still have to get to the book of the Divine Mother.
Yeah.
So this is sort of preparing us for this great future, and I'm going to speak about that tonight at 5 o'clock. Why the 24th is so important in the evolution of the earth and of humanity. It won't be very long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes.
By the way, it fits so well into this kind of, it's like a coincidence. Only was missing the soul timeless word. And this is exactly this mother meeting Sri Aurobindo, you know. He calls her down. It is his journey. It is his yoga here. And he seeks her. He wants her. He calls her down and she comes down.
Well, you've done most of my talk today, so thank you.
Oh, no. Look. Well, we all think in the same way, yes, definitely.
Yes, exactly. So let us carry on. Have to go down a little bit. Okay. And then he gives us this vision that he sees. It's an extraordinary vision, and it goes on. So we'll begin. There, walled apart by its own innerness, in a mystical barrage of dynamic light, he saw a lone, immense, high-curved world pile, erect like a mountain chariot of the gods, motionless under an inscrutable sky. What is he seeing here? He's seeing something that is walled apart by its own innerness. And then he says that there's this mystical barrage of dynamic light in which he sees this lone, immense, high curved world pile, erect like a mountain chariot of the gods, motionless under an inscrutable sky. So he sees this creation, he calls it a world pile. Interesting, world-pile. That's sometimes how I feel we are also. We're all piled together with our ideas and our formulas, our preferences and our prejudices. It's not quite the Tower of Babel, but it is a world pile. And under that, he sees something else, as if from matter's plinth and viewless base to a top as viewless. So from the very bottom, he sees this plinth and viewless base, and then he sees the top, and the top is also viewless. He sees a carved sea of worlds climbing with foam-maned waves to the supreme, ascended towards breadths immeasurable. It hoped to soar into the ineffable's reign. 100 levels raised it to the unknown. And we have to continue here. So it towered up to heights intangible and disappeared in the hushed conscious vast. How does it disappear? As climbs a storied temple tower to heaven, built by the aspiring soul of man to live near to his dream of the invisible. If we look at the Indian temples, we see that these temples are built in a very certain way. They actually ascend towards these immeasurable breadths. And we see that there's 100 levels that it raises to the unknown. And then he even uses the word a storied temple tower. Storied here is like not like a fiction or a real story, but it's stories, different levels. A storied temple tower to heaven. And it's built by us, by the aspiring soul of man, so he is able to live near to his dream of the invisible. When I was quite young, I used to ask my teacher, why are all these figures at the base of the temples often very erotic? And he said to me, you see, unless you are purified, you cannot get into the inner essence. And so it's this inner essence of these 100 levels rising into the unknown, towering up to the intangible heights, as sort of this temple tower does to heaven, that is built by man and is near to his dream of the invisible. Any questions this far? I know this is complex poetry, but it's very powerful.
By the way,
yes, go ahead, Vladimir.
By the way, what you compared with Babel Tower, this is tower. This is something very close to it, because this desire of the lower being to reach to heaven, that's the whole story about it, that the king with all his kingdom tried to conquer heaven with his means. So he comes to the top and he shoots, I'm speaking from the esoteric history, and he shoots the arrow into the heaven. he announces the war to heaven from earth. And then he receives the answer of the lightning from above, and he falls down, and the whole Babel Tower is crumbled down. This is the beginning of this kind of when all the languages were dispersed and started to be different. But this idea of rising, or this kind of aspiration from earth, from this ignorance to reach to heaven, is very strong. Maybe that is also the answer why the erotic pictures are on the surface.
Well, that's also something else about. And by the way, the pronunciation of the word is Babel.
Babel, yes, Babel. We say Babylonian tower.
Babylonian, yes, but the word Babel is used by Sri Aurobindo just after he uses the word Babel.
Okay.
Very interesting. We will see that in Savitri as we go on. So the Babel Tower was actually never built because these people could not understand each other. Again, it seems to be rather like us today in the world. So they spoke thousands of different tongues and nothing could be done because there was no oneness of the aspiring soul of man to live near to his dream of the invisible. Now he continues here. Infinity calls to it as it dreams and climbs. Its spire touches the apex of the world. Mounting into great voiceless stillnesses, it marries the earth to screened eternities. So this is very interesting where Sri Aurobindo is taking us now. He's saying that this temple tower, this aspiring soul of man, which we can also call a temple tower in a way, infinity is calling to it. And infinity is calling to us as we dream and we climb upward. Definitely it's calling to us. And what else is happening here? Well, we find that its spire, the spire of this aspiration, touches the apex of the worlds. The apex, the very top of the worlds. And for me, that's the world, actually. It's extremely important because the next two lines, there's a semicolon after the word world, mounting into great voiceless stillnesses, it marries the earth to screened eternities. Those eternities are still screened because we're not ready to see them yet. Mother told Huta one time that if I showed my real body to the world or to a human being, they would be shattered. They could not take it. So then Huta says to Mother, but Mother, are you really the divine? This is the way Huta could ask things to Mother. And Mother said, come tomorrow. Wow. And I'm sitting in Huta's room with her. And she says to me, I came, Narad. And from the waist up, Mother who showed me who she was, I couldn't take it. The beauty was so intense, so vast, illimitable. She was shaken. She was actually shaking when she was telling me this. So now we see that it marries the earth to screened eternities. Amid the many systems of the one, made by an interpreting creative joy. Oh, I have to stop there for a moment because Sri Aurobindo says, joy made the world, not some negative force or influence. Joy created this world. And in that joy, we see that it's a creative joy, and it interprets things because it takes us, and here's the line, alone, it points us to our journey back out of our long self-loss in nature's deeps. Planted on earth, it holds in it all realms. It is a brief compendium of the vast. What is this self-loss of us in nature's deeps? Well, Sri Aurobindo and Mother tell us that when the soul chooses to take birth, even if it has chosen the vehicle of its birth, and often the soul does choose its vehicle, you would ask, why would it choose its vehicle? Well, this child asked Mother, what would Beethoven come back as? And Mother said, perhaps a shoemaker. It is just approaching the problem from a different angle. So beautiful. So we see that our self-loss in nature's deeps is the result of the shock of the descent of the soul into a human body. When that soul, that emerging soul, is in the womb, it is in the mother. It is growing in the mother. The moment it comes out of the mother, there's often a great shock. And that shock we often have seen, I would say in more than 90% of childbirths, is a cry. Doctors used to slap the child on its bottom to make it cry, in fact. So that cry of coming back to earth without any knowledge of anything. The mind at that time has no knowledge. The vital has no force. All it can do is feed upon the mother. It can't do anything. It can't even move except to be against the mother's breast. And only in time we see that out of our long self-loss in nature's deeps, planted on earth, it holds in it all realms. And we begin to slowly realize that a divinity is in us. And that divinity holds in it all the realms, not only of earth, but of all the worlds. But he says here, planted on earth, it holds in it all realms. And therefore, it is a brief compendium of this entire vast. And then he sees it and he says that this was the single stair to being's goal, a summary of the stages of the spirit, its copy of the cosmic hierarchies, refashioned in our secret air of self, a subtle pattern of the universe. Now that's just what I was beginning to talk about. This single stair. I believe maybe once before, but I don't recall if I talked to you about it. Once I asked Arindam Basu about this single stair to being's goal. And he said, he called it a path. He said, we are all on the same path. Interesting. But he says, some are ahead of me and some are behind me. How can I have anger or impatience at anyone, because we're all on the same path. And here Sri Aurobindo tells us that very, very clearly. This was the single stair to being's goal. A summary of the stages of the spirit. Yes, we grow. We have stages of the spirit. We have times when the heart opens. We have times when the mind opens. We have times when the silence deepens in us. And we have times even when the body becomes slightly conscious. So this was the single stair to being's goal, a summary of the stages of the spirit, its copy of the cosmic hierarchies, refashioned in our secret air of self, a subtle pattern of the universe. You want to say something from the Vedas here, Vladimir?
Well, it is this kind of return or evolutionary stairs which we start from the seed, like from the seed, the whole tree is coming, and from the tree, all other beings. So everything is already involved in there. So the whole vast kind of transcendental being is there within the seed, and from that seed, everything grows into it. Evolutionary slowly unfolds. This is all Sri Aurobindo's vision, and of course the Vedic at the same time.
Yes. The interesting thing is that none of us can see that tree in the seed as yet. And he gives us a line in Savitri about that. And we'll get to that eventually. So we know somehow that from that seed, a great oak tree or a great tree can grow. But we don't see that it's inherent in the seed as we look at the seed. For that, we need different eyes. So I'll continue a little more, and then we'll give it up for today. So we have it is within, below, without, above. Yes, it's everywhere. Do any of you know the Christ poem? It's very beautiful. Christ within me, Christ below me, Christ without me, Christ above me. Very similar. It is within, below, without, above. Acting upon this visible nature scheme, it wakens our earth matter's heavy doze to think and feel and to react to joy, semicolon. It models in us our diviner parts, lifts mortal mind into a greater air, makes yearn this life of flesh to intangible aims, links the body's death with immortality's call, colon. Out of the swoon of the inconscience, it labors towards, it labors towards a superconscient light. This should be what all of us can take today on this 24th day of April, that the divine is within us, he's below us, he's outside of us, he's above us, he is us. And then he continues that the divine is acting upon this visible nature scheme. It wakens our earth matter's heavy doze. Well, there's no doubt that earth matter can often be a very heavy doze. We often call it tamasic, inertia, the great inertia. Everything seemingly going towards entropy, but it's not. because he says it wakens this heavy doze, this heavy sleep, to think and feel and to react to joy. It models in us our diviner parts, lifts mortal mind into a greater air, makes yearn this life of flesh to intangible aims, links the body's death with immortality's call. And there's a colon there, because this is very important, because he says here the body's death, but we know that that we don't die. And when Sri Aurobindo speaks about death, he says we're just changing one piece of clothing for another. That's all death is. And my friend has told me that we've all had 1,000 lives already to get to this point, 1,000 and more than 1,000. So he's making our life of flesh yearn to intangible aims. He's linking the body's death with immortality's call. And out of the swoon, so we see these magnificent words coming in, this swoon of the inconscience. When someone is a swoon, it's almost comatose. When we faint, we say she's in a swoon, or he's in a swoon. So we see this swoon of the inconscience that is laboring towards a superconscient light. Now, to end for today. If earth were all, and this were not in her, thought could not be, nor life delight's response. Only material forms could then be her guests, driven by an inanimate world force. Well, certainly this world force is not inanimate, and we are aware of it, we feel it, we live it, we breathe it. If earth were all, and this force that is modeling us in our diviner parts, lifting our mortal minds into a greater air, making us yearn in this life of flesh to aims that seemingly are intangible, and linking the body's death with immortality's call. Notice it's a link, huh? Linking the body's death. There is no separation here. Linking the body's death with immortality's call. Out of the swoon of the inconscience, it labors towards a superconscient light. And then he tells us again, and we'll close with these 4 lines. If earth were all, in other words, if this planet of simple matter were all, and this were not in her, if this were not in earth, there could be no life. Because it is life that has come into earth and made earth to become initially conscient. Thought could not be, nor life delight's response. Only material forms could then be her guests. Only material forms, but they're inanimate, driven by an inanimate world force. Before I say namaste, I would ask all of you, please do send me your photographs, because I'm working daily now on my archives, and there are many photos that I don't have, and I would be grateful if you could send me your photo, or 2 or 3, whatever you like. I have thousands of letters and more than 110 volumes of archives. So everyone has a place, and everyone should be remembered with love and gratitude. Namaste.
Namaste.
Narad.
Thank you, Narad.
Sorry for missing our session, Shilpa. You have to remind me. Look at your look at your Skype. I've written you a message on Skype. I won't miss next time.
Okay, thank you so much, Narad.
Thank you all.
I feel
Bye.
totally blessed. Thanks much.